Hello everyone, it's Richard again here at Calvin Wazoo with another video for you and another one in my series of Frank Zappa's catalog, one album at a time. And now I'm up to release number 6, which is Uncle Meat. Really important album, in my opinion, in Zappa's discography. It's another double album. Lots of weirdness going on with the cover art, and for me, this marks when Zappa really comes into his own as a composer. I mean, he's always been a composer in with his earlier material, but it's really coming forward now in his vision, even stronger, particularly in terms of the conceptual continuity going on with each of the releases. So there are these different musical themes in this release, and some people say there are two musical themes going on, and some say there are three. The ones who say there are three are talking about the Uncle Meat variations on this recording, the dog breath variations on this recording, and then King Kong variations. These are the three musical themes that they talk about. Now, others say that there really are only two, that the dog breath variations don't quite qualify as a truly distinct theme bringing the album together. And I kind of lean towards that the two driving themes are the Uncle Meat variations and then King Kong variations. There was also, here it is on the Ryko Disc CD release. This was also supposed to be part of a movie. It was going to be a soundtrack of a movie by the same name. But, Frank and the band, they couldn't get the money together to complete the film. So there were some parts of it that were filmed, some production that was going on, but it remained unfinished. However, then about 1987, a sort of documentary was released about the making of Uncle Meat. So it includes, documentary type footage, and as well as scenes that were captured on film that were supposed to be part of the eventual movie. And this was released on VHS in 1987. No DVD release ever came out of this. So it was only on the VHS. And there are going to be some links down under to both the internet database, IMDb, Internet Movie Database, and as well as to some YouTube videos that include some excerpts. And I think one of them actually has the full VHS release. So those channels or those links will be down in the down under, so you can check that out. Reading about, I have not seen the film, and nor have I seen any of these links. I'm going to watch them after I finish making this video. I will take some time to look at them. But what I've been reading about them is that they're really only for the super diehard Zappa fan because it pretty much sucks. Uh, so, I mean, I've seen 200 Motels, and 200 Motels is, yeah, that kind of falls into that categorization that it's really only for the diehard Zappa fan. And I wouldn't go so much to say that it really sucks. It's not. It's not good. It is still pretty awful. But the whatever was put together for Uncle Meat is was considered pretty awful. I mean, it's I guess a series of seemingly unrelated skits. You know, somebody eating a hamburger in a phone booth in the rain. Just weird stuff that was kind of strung together. Even though when you read about the movie, the film, in the Internet Movie Database website, there was a storyline, um, but I'm not quite clear on what that storyline is, even after reading it. Now, this is a release that also has some issues regarding re-releases, later releases. So, for example, this was released in April of 1969. What I was showing you here is the Zappa Records reissue, which is 2013. Yeah, 2013. I do have an original uh, on the Bazaar label. And another reason why you want to, keep the vinyl stored outside of the record sleeve is so this cover is in pretty good shape. There's very minimal ring wear, and the fact that I'm keeping the wax outside of the cover means I'm not going to be contributing to further ring wear. And the cover itself is in pretty good condition, but taking it out and opening it, etc., it's going to be getting fragile. The records, though, are in near mint condition. And so a lot of times when I listen to this, I will listen to the original pressings here rather than the ones that were released on Zappa Records. Because as I was starting to say, there is some discrepancy between, the different releases. And part of that started showing up with the CDs, okay? So the thing is that it's got all the standard tracks that are on the vinyl release, except on the second disc, which has all the sequences for King Kong. It has some dialogue, ostensibly from the movie, from the film, and then this song sandwiched in between these two portions of dialogue called Tengo na Minkia Tanta, which is completely anachronistic. It sounds nothing like anything else on the album. Because this was released initially in the late 80s, okay? And by the way, basically, Tengo na Minkia Tanta translates as I have a big dick. It's just in the production is very 80s. It very like I was saying that this was released in the 80s, and it has a very 80s feel to it, and like very much like you might hear on something like The Man from Utopia, which was an early 80s release of Zappa's. So it just really sticks out. And then you got the dialogue starting off the second disc, and which a lot of people were kind of calling it punishment because it interfered with the whole flow of the album. And, it was set before King Kong rather than perhaps putting it afterward. Um, so yeah, many people kind of considered it was punishment. And the dialogue in here is really, really lame. I mean, it is. It's just when I got the CD and I was listening to it, I was like, what is this? I mean, I really don't like it. And it's one of the reasons why I hardly ever play the CD. And when I do, I skip over that part because it is, really, really awful. Now, the reason, why did that get inserted? Why? Well, at the time, the maximum time limit for the amount of data on a CD was 74 minutes. And the entire double LP of Uncle Meat clocks in at 75 and a half minutes. So it was basically 90 seconds longer than could be fit on a single CD. And so we're only talking, 90 seconds. Did I say 90 minutes? 90 seconds. You don't put a double CD out for 90 seconds of additional material or spread it out, that way. So, in Frank's infinite wisdom, he released it as a double CD and then added all this extra material, the dialogue from the movie, which the Uncle Meat film excerpt part 1 comes in at 37 and a half minutes. I mean, it just drags on. Then you got Tengyou na Minkia Tanta at 3 minutes 46 seconds. And then another film excerpt of some more dialogue at for 3 minutes and 51 seconds. So we're talking, throwing in another 40 to 45 minutes of garbage, in my opinion. Hey, you like it? Fight me on it. Yeah, put something down under it. And then we finally get to King Kong, which is the classic, the amazing, the most incredible. I think it's probably Zappa's best and most incredible composition. So also, there were some songs that were remixed. Obviously, there was a lot of remixing that went on here because, again, they were saying that the original masters had oxidized and, couldn't reissue, using the original masters. So when the 2013 reissue came out, it is slightly modified from what was originally released in 1969. And there is a note in here from Joe Travers. Yeah, Joe Travers, who has been managing the vault and pulling out some of the older material, for making reissues. It's pretty close to the original, but there is some different remixes. For example, on the CD, you can definitely hear some of the differences, particularly on King Kong. On the CD mix, it's a little denser, and maybe that's because of the compression factor going on with the compact disc and digitizing the analog music. But because my original on the Bizarre label, the wax is in such good condition, this is what I listen to. And, there's definitely as I say, the original mix, you can hear a difference. So interesting thing about this release also, some of the compositions feature the entire band playing, and these are usually some of the live ones. And then some of the other pieces, the more challenging and intricate compositions, are being played essentially by just three members of the Mothers of Invention because they were the ones who could read music fluently. That was the key element. They were very fluent at reading music. And that included Bunk Gardner and Ian Underwood, who played all the woodwind instruments, and then Art Tripp, the percussionist, drums, and other percussive instruments. And then, of course, Frank Zappa. The compositions move from very complex, such as with the opening theme, the Uncle Meat theme and variations, to other songs that are very much doo-woppy, R&B structured, songs like Cruising for Burgers and Electric Aunt Jemima. But even these songs have these inside references, sort of inside jokes that are going on, particularly with Electric Aunt Jemima, which is a song about an amplifier that Frank used to use for a few sessions. That's what he named it. And then also some of the lyrics are references to conversations that he and Don Van Vliet, Captain Beefheart, they had like in a Denny's at night or something like that. And so some of the Cruising for Burgers, would have some of these other references to very local spots and local connections that other people, unless you were in the know, you would know that. You would be thinking, what the heck is this song about? What are they talking about? So it's very much a very inside thing. Then you got a song like Louie Louie, which kind of comes out of the blue because they were playing at the Royal Albert Hall, and this huge guy climbs up on stage and joins the band. This is not the situation in which which was also at the Royal Albert Hall, in which a crazed fan got up on stage or whatever and grabbed Frank and pulled him off the stage or pushed him off the stage, and that's when Frank broke his leg quite badly and was stuck in a wheelchair for months. No, this was before. This would have been, probably in 67 or 68. So this guy comes up on stage and he wants to play music with the band. And he takes a bass trumpet and starts playing, and it becomes immediately apparent he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to play this thing. So that's when, in a quick recovery mode to try and save the show, Frank gets Don Preston he starts climbing up the speakers, right? And he's getting up on the wall or whatever. He's going up across the, I guess maybe he got up to a catwalk or something, and then he's going to buy these pipes for a pipe organ. It's the Royal Albert Hall pipe organ. And he gets up there, and once he figures out the stops, he starts playing Louie Louie, and then the band joins in with him, and at this point you can hear a little bit of the guy playing this bass trumpet, and then Preston starts playing Louie Louie, and then the band comes in with their amps. They're like turned up all the way, so it's just this wall of noise and distortion, coming up, and then the song finishes with a flourish by, I am presuming, Ian Underwood going crazy on a saxophone. So just a lot of different things. that are going on, but also the foundations and the different variations are being laid out with songs like Uncle Meat variations, to some degree with the Dog Breath variations, which was a song that shows up on other albums, and very famously when Flo and Eddie did it on Just Another Band from LA. And then, of course, King Kong variations. There's another little interesting song in there too, where Ian Underwood talks about how he auditioned to play in the band. And the gist of the story is that, Frank asked him, "What can you play?" I play saxophone and I play the piano. And so Frank says, "Okay, well, whip it out." And then it cuts to Underwood in this live take. He's playing in Copenhagen, and he's just playing this searing, incredible, shrieking, avant-garde, improvisational stuff on his saxophone. It just sounds incredible. It's mind-blowing, So that was, that's just another one of those little amazing tidbits in there. But truly, the star of the album is King Kong. And here's the thing about King Kong. It's jazz fusion. And perhaps it is the first recording of true jazz fusion that was released. Now, I know that Miles Davis gets all the credit pretty much for launching jazz fusion into the rest of the world. And his efforts in that realm certainly contained or held the most influence, for sure, on jazz musicians going forward. And a lot of it is credited to Bitches Brew, but in fact, Miles Davis was already starting toward the jazz fusion form of music with In a Silent Way. So, all right, Uncle Meat, right, is released in April of 1969. And In a Silent Way was released in July 1969. So just by sheer release date, you could say Frank was the first one to debut jazz fusion, or what would become recognized as jazz fusion, before Miles Davis. But then we can also look at, well, when was the music recorded? And in the case of In a Silent Way, that was all recorded in one session in February the same year. All right? So in February of 69, In a Silent Way is recorded. And so when was the music recorded for Uncle Meat? Well, actually, all the music was pretty much recorded, scored, written down. The music that had to be written down on paper was all done in 1967 and 1968. This is that period that I was kind of alluding to in earlier videos, particularly centering around, Lumpy Gravy and We're Only in It for the Money. Frank was involved in a lot of projects. And so a lot of the work, the themes, and the music and the recording of the music occurred in 67 and 68. And so when it came to putting this all down on a single, master, that would have been in spring of 69, prior to the release of this album in April of 69. So, I recognize that Miles Davis got all the credit for that shift in music, the shift in jazz and the blending of jazz and rock. And his influence is undeniably a factor there because of the musicians he worked with on In a Silent Way and on Bitches Brew, and what they did on their own, John McLaughlin with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Wayne Shorter and others with Weather Report, Chick Corea, and Herbie Hancock, Stanley Clarke, all these others who had worked with Miles Davis on these two projects and what they did subsequent to that. That was the driving force in the innovation of jazz fusion and the original form of jazz fusion. But Frank was doing it. He was doing it earlier than Miles did. So while Miles gets the credit for shifting, and I mean it's big credit for shifting and changing the direction of music. Really fundamentally doing that. He was the person who moved everything, but it was Frank who innovated the combination, in my opinion, the combination of rock and rhythm and blues with the techniques of jazz and, to many degrees, classical composition. So, in my opinion, he's the original author of fusion as a musical genre. But yeah, the King Kong is an incredible composition. As I said, it's my favorite Zappa composition. I love listening to it. It's very versatile composition. You can play it a lot of different ways. I think the only composition that's also a jazz fusion composition that gets played more in live shows than King Kong, I'm going to say, is Peaches and Regalia. And also, not only was it performed more, I believe, it certainly was recorded more and shows up on more albums than the different variations of King Kong does in other subsequent albums. So this is a really, in my view, important album release in Zappa's discography. It marks a point in his musical career where his identity as a true composer, we're not talking about someone who, a singer-songwriter, or, even other bands, they write their own music, and put the music together, sure. We're talking a composer, though, who has a vision of exactly what the music is not only going to sound like, but he can put it down on paper for other musicians to play. And he was able to find the musicians who could do that. And so that's why I really believe this is a critical sort of key album in the discography. Certainly one that if you haven't investigated Zappa's material very deeply, this is one you need to go to and listen to it multiple times. It is just fascinating every time. So tell me, what do you think about Uncle Meat? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think of my thoughts about Zappa being the true originator of jazz fusion? Hey, pick a fight with me if you want to, all right? Leave a comment in the Down Under. As I mentioned before, I will have some other links in the Down Under to information about the film Uncle Meat. And like the video, please. And please remember, as I always say at the close of these videos, enjoy your music. That's what it's there for.